Hi guys, me here again. All right, so I quickly wanted to talk about chapter 11. Chapter 11 is based about the tech pack, and it's also some good information about some quality standards, quality compliance, quality assurance. Basically, everything you need to know in order to make your garment and make what you want and make sure that it's delivered the way that you think that it will be delivered and onto the floor. So I'm going to do this in two parts. I'm going to do the first part. I'm going to talk about quality, a little bit about testing, um, and a little bit about packing and shipping. And then second part, there'll be a separate video. I'm going to talk just about the tech pack. I'm going to go through and each part of the tech pack, and then I'm also going to explain to you the tech pack project and what will be expected of you guys for that. So here goes for the first part. So quality. So quality is one of the biggest points of conversation when you are talking about the apparel industry because most people want high quality, low price, right? So you want something that has the best quality possible, and you want to pay the least amount of money for it. That's pretty much how it works. So what ends up happening is that usually you set standards for your company and for your brand that is not negotiable, and that is important. It's very, very important to do that. It's important to understand when you start to work for a brand or a company, um, you understand what's important to them. So different things to different companies are important. So one company might be the highest quality possible, doesn't matter the price. Another company might not do great quality and they just want it to be low cost. So you have to understand what matters to you and what matters to your team. So once you understand that, then you make sure that you relay the message to your vendors. So your vendor is who's going to make every item for you. You'll have multiple vendors. So you as a company will have a list of standards that they need to meet. And that is something that's just known. Um, if they've worked with you for a long time, they should know your company standards. If it's a new vendor, you'll need to onboard them. And who does that? It depends on the roles of the people that you're working with, but sometimes it's a sourcing person, sometimes it's a product person. Sometimes it's the technical designer because they know the most sometimes about sort of manufacturing and what it takes to make a garment. No matter what, it needs to be relayed to the vendor. And a new vendor need to be handheld. So every step of the way, you want to make sure that you have close eyes on what they're doing. Why is quality so important? Basically, you want to ensure that whatever has your name on it, whatever has your brand on it, especially your team that's touching it, is something that you would approve. So all the way, every step of the way, there's a ton of approvals in place. We talked about lab dips. We talk about fit approvals. Every step of the way, your name is on this, and you're following this style to completion. And when that style hits the floor and it's actually in the store, you want to be proud of it, and you want to make sure that it is a representation of the tech pack and what your team put out there. Now, you could do everything in your power and it could still look shitty on the floor. This happens sometimes. Could happen often, more often than not. It depends on your vendors and the factories that you're working with. If you are working with good factories, that should never happen. But sometimes there's factories that aren't that great and they can do a product for a price. And the price that you pay is you never really know what you're going to get. Anyways, so if you go to chapter 11 and page 338, there's something called the product quality iceberg and quality cost iceberg. And it's really interesting because this is very, very true. So there's a lot of things that nobody really thinks about or talks about. And so many things can go wrong in the process. And when things go wrong, they cost money, time, energy. So the best thing that you can do is prevent this from happening. There's a point in the book that says that it's about quality prevention, not detection. So you will always probably find the quality issue somewhere along the line, even if it's in the store, you will see it. But you don't want that to happen. You want to prevent it. You want to make sure that you're doing everything that you can to have everything to be exactly right. So a couple things of the hidden costs is mistakes, reworks, overtime, rush deliveries, excess inventory, retraining, duplication of effort, late charges, equipment failure, lost business, customer returns. All of this stuff is money to the bottom line, and it adds up, adds up, adds up, adds up. So at the end of the day, you're not making as much as you think you would be making if it was just sold perfect, no issues. So a lot of this quality standards are detailed out in the tech pack. So the tech pack will state exactly the expectation of how things need to be made and how you as a company want them to be done. And the vendor should voice concern or questions up front. If they don't, then it becomes a bit of an issue if you're further down the line and they say, well, we don't want to do it this way, we want to do it this way. And you say, no, it says in my tech pack very clearly that it needs to be done this way. And if you had an issue with it, you should have told me up front. And they didn't. So then that's something that you would negotiate and then you would sort of fight to basically stand your ground. Again, I'm not going to get into the tech pack. We'll do that separate. But the other thing that is important is testing. So quality, there's a table on page 342, and it's table 11.1. It says quality assurance standards, basic testing requirements for fabric findings and trims. So moral of the story, everything that gets made and shipped to the US, there is a testing standard. It has to pass testing. And this is set by the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. So it depends on sort of what category you're working with. The testing requirements for kids are different than what they are for adults. And you will need to know exactly what needs to be tested and what it takes to pass. Some common tests are fiber content. So they will test the garment and the fiber content will come out. So sometimes you'll have something that you think is 100% cotton and you're labeling it as 100% cotton, and then you test it and it comes out as like 97% cotton and the 3% some other weird fiber. So that poses an issue depending on how you're going to label it. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but if you're going to label something as 100%, then you want to make sure that it says 100% and then it matches. So fiber content is important. Thread count, fabric weight, it's important. Color fastness to water, crocking, color fastness to light, color fastness to perspiration, so sweat. So if you sweat, is the color going to bleed? It's going to test the garment to see if you have a red sweater or a red shirt. If you sweat and it rubs up against your skin, is the red going to come out onto your skin? Because if it does, you have a problem and it doesn't pass. Pilling. So any knits or sweaters, they have to pass pilling. So pilling is an issue across the board. It happens. It's the nature of the garment. It's the nature of the yarn. But it needs to pass this test. And the test is subjective. So a machine is going to take a section and it's going to rub it. It's going to rub the sweater until it does the abrasion, until it's basically you see some pilling. And it's how this garment reacts to it is sort of what is being looked at. It's a subjective test. So the testing specialist is going to look at it and they're going to rate it. I forget what the numbers are, but essentially it needs to pass at a certain number. And that information is going to get back to you. Let's see, dimensional stability. So shrinkage. Does it shrink? You don't want something to shrink. And it needs to pass this. If it shrinks, then you have a problem. And then you need to relook at sort of your laundering. It will come with a recommendation of how to wash it, how to care for it. This is all coming out in the testing requirements. So you could go on for days about this. It's actually very interesting. It's an aspect of this field that people are not always well versed in, just because it's something that not many people talk about and not many people really know the ins and outs of it unless that's your job. It's good to understand sort of the basics. So when you have a second, take a look at that table just to understand what are the things that they're looking for, because this is across the board. And it might not be your job responsibility, but you need to understand that it needs to pass in order to ship. And if it doesn't pass, then you have a problem that you need to fix. So there's that. The other thing that is included is the cutting instructions. We talked about this, the cut order plan, how you want things to be cut. In the tech pack, there'll be some instructions. So if you have a pattern, if you have a plaid, if you have a print, even a stripe, say if you have a cardigan and you want the stripes to match up at the center front, you need to indicate that. Because if you do not indicate that, the way that you want the pattern to be cut, they're not going to do it because it costs more money and more time to sit there and make sure that they're lining everything up. Plaids, if you want them to meet in the middle, you need to indicate that. So that's another important detail that needs to be added. And that would go into the quality as well. So there's also, it gets into sewing instructions. We're going to talk about this when we talk about the tech pack. This is another area that kind of can be overwhelming with information because it's important, but it's another thing that even if you know the basics, you're better off. So we'll save that and the different types of seams. So, but I do want to talk about commodity versus fashion products. So commodity versus fashion. A commodity product is like denim, t-shirts, men's dress shirts. These are things that are common that can be made sort of easily. You could even do it on an automated machine because everything is sort of to a T. It's the way that it always has been. A V-neck t-shirt, you really can't screw it up. So this is easy. It's not a ton of money to produce just because it doesn't take a lot of thought. So a fashion product is a little bit different. It has a little bit more design in it, and you need more people, more hands. It might take a little bit more time in the production process. So the way something is costed is essentially how long it takes to make and how long it takes to do the whole thing start to finish because they're paying obviously by the hour. Let's see. So there in the book, there is a nice little diagram on page 349 you can take a look at. There's what seems after. The tech pack stuff. And more pieces I want to talk about. Okay, labels. Yes, this is important. So labeling. This is a whole nother section that it actually takes a lot of time. So labels, obviously there's labels in everything. So care and content label. There is a brand label, what has the name on it. There is a size and country of origin label, and we call it an SCOO label. So if you have a moment, and I'm going to have you do a question in the book, and basically I want you to look and find a garment and just take a look at the labels. So labeling can be expensive. It needs to be accurate, and it needs to be in line with the testing. So once you get the testing, you can do the labels because then you know how to care and content for it. You will be set up with a label supplier usually. There's a couple big ones that usually are used. Avery is a big one. So if you're doing labels, so if you have one brand and let's say J. Crew, they work with a supplier. They probably have millions and millions of labels already made that just get shipped to the factory. But maybe you are doing like an off brand, or maybe you're starting a new line. You need to create artwork, make a label, have the label made, and then have it brought to the factory. Sometimes the vendor will opt to make the labels for you to save cost. This is tricky. Sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not great quality, but sometimes they can do it and it might look just the same as it would with anybody else. So labeling is very important, and this is also included in the tech pack. So you want to make sure that you're indicating in the tech pack exactly what label you want and where you want to put it. So you're going to talk back neck label. You're going to talk about your hang tag. You're going to talk about your size and country of origin label, and then you're going to talk about your care and content. All those things are important, and it's necessary in order to ship the garment. Some things that are included in your labeling. Let's see, don't forget any. So the FTC, their requirements in order to ship the garment to the US, it's called the Fair Trade Commission. The labels must disclose fiber content, the trim. If you have trim, If it's less than 15% of the garment, you don't need to say what it's made out of. That's important. Manufacturer identification, country of origin, and care. There's also an RN number. This is your company's RN number. So every garment has a number in there that will link it back to the, hold on. Okay, hello. I forget, I had to pause for a second, but I grabbed a shirt. It's wrinkled, but to just show you. So this would be your main, they call it a back neck label. This is Banana Republic. And so this would be your size and your country of origin. I know it's reversed for you guys, but so it's a small and it's made in Vietnam. So this is just the way that this one's set up. Sometimes they look a little bit different. Sometimes you'll have like your care and content here as well. And then on the side for this particular style, there is this little booklet. So each garment will be different. Everybody does it a little bit differently, but now everything is so global that they try to basically use these little illustrations, instead of words, so that your care instructions are universal. So the pictures make it universal rather than a language. If you shop at Zara, H&M, those are really global. They have like a booklet, a really long booklet that is a bunch of different languages all translated. And the benefit of this is that you don't need to order separate labels for each individual country, especially in Europe where the countries are smaller and they speak a lot of different languages. So it's just easier that way, and it's easier on the vendor, the manufacturer, and also on your team, because then you don't have to worry about all these different label codes. So just like anything else, like your label that you choose will have a certain code to make sure that you are all speaking the right language. So this one on this, it says small, and then there is up here, you'll see the RN number. So that is the number that traces back to the company. And then this one says made in Vietnam, and it says 100% modal. So that, and then this one says machine wash, cold, gentle cycle, wash with light colors, only non-coloring bleach when needed, dry, flat, cool, iron. And then it's in a couple different languages, et cetera, et cetera. So and then also you are able to cut it off. So now that everything's so global, that the labels have just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. So a lot of people now just cut them off. Anyways, very important. It's something that gets overlooked, but labels give us a way to sort of communicate with the consumer and let them know kind of what it is that they're buying and why they might like it. So some things are call out labels. So if you have cashmere sweater, you might want to call out that it's 100% cashmere. You could do that on the back neck label. You could do that on a hang tag. All that stuff needs to be thought about up front and negotiated with the package, and you need to make sure that you have all the labelings that are necessary. Okay. Well, other thing is packaging. So packaging is also another conversation that needs to be done upfront with the vendor. Depending on how you are going to package your individual item, this might be something like for Christmas. A lot of people do box items as this like gift items, which is great because it gives people the opportunity just to kind of like walk by and buy it. Perfect gift for somebody. Usually they're at a promotional price. But sometimes these boxes that these items come in, sometimes the boxes cost just as much as the mittens that are inside of them. So packaging is very expensive, and you want to make sure that you are thinking about it up front and negotiating it up front, and that is a whole other aspect of things that need to be dealt with on the front half of it. You don't want to be dealing with it at the back half, because the vendor needs to understand sort of where they need to get all of these things and make sure when the garment is complete that they have the right packaging and they have the right labels so that everything can get put on at the same time. If the vendor does not have clear instruction of what they need and how to get it or where to get it, you're in for some trouble, because they want to move their lines as quickly as possible. And if your item is running through the lines and it's ready to get packed, but they don't have any of the labels, they don't have the hang tags, if they don't have the right packing equipment, they're going to get upset because then they need to stop and they need to physically pick up your stuff and move them out of the line and move something else. So it screws up their whole situation there. So you just need to make sure that you are giving the right information in a timely manner. So the other thing is that is different per company is how the items are packed to be shipped. So a lot of companies really want things to be as floor ready as possible. At TJX, we used to call it store ready. And essentially what that is that you are the vendor is shipping, is doing the garment, and then they're packing it in the best way possible so that you on the end of once this item gets to your store, that you need to do the least amount of work possible. So a store ready for certain people would mean that the way that it's shipped is that if you order a certain style, you might order it in 3 colors, but that certain style might have 5 different sizes. And all those sizes are going to be extra small, small, medium, large, extra large. They're going to be packed together so that literally somebody at the DC or the store, they just need to pick the items up, and they might already be on a hanger. They might be shipped on a hanger. They pick them up, and then they can just literally put them out on the floor. If that is not the case, then they need to sometimes label them at the DC. Sometimes they need to put the hangers on every one of them. Sometimes they need to organize them. It takes a lot of time, money, effort on this end. With that being said, it's also very expensive on the vendor, and they don't love doing it when it's complicated because obviously they want things to be easy as possible. So it's a negotiation up front, and that is part of your quality standard, that your vendor needs to know up front how things are going to be shipped, and they need to follow that. If they don't follow that, there becomes consequences, and it's almost like a vendor report card. And if they do things wrong once, they do things wrong twice, they do things wrong 3 times, you might not work with them again. So they're going to kind of have like a rap sheet, and you need to basically understand so that when you go to work with them again, that you can address it on the front half to make sure that they're understanding exactly what your standards are and what your expectations are. So quality compliance is just basically a statement, an understanding of sort of what your standards are. Every line, every item is going to be inspected. So it's inspected at the factory level. When something is complete, it's inspected the entire time, and they're always sort of looking at things, picking them off and doing little inspections as they go. But at the end, when it's complete, they will pick an item off of the line at random, and they're going to measure it. They're going to run through every single point of measurement. They're going to look at it. They're going to look at the flap. They're going to pull it up to the light. They're going to see if there's any holes in it. They're going to make sure all the stitches are complete. If that goes well, then usually it'll just pass through. They're not checking every single garment. There's no way. But if there's an issue, that's when they'll pull another one, and then they'll pull another one, and then they'll pull another one. And then if you have a big, big issue, then it comes to the attention of your team, and you have to decide what you want to do with it. So a lot of the times you'll ask for extra samples. You'll ask for a size run or a color run, and you will bring them to your office, and you'll have your own team spec them out, look at them very carefully, and basically see what you think. If it is an issue, you need to then decide, have the conversations. Is it saleable? Do we want to stand behind the product? Is it something that we don't even want to ship to the stores? In that case, then you need to start talking about what you're going to do. So a lot of the time, things are paid by an LC or a letter of credit. So at that point, it becomes a little complicated because it's a whole financial situation that we will get into a little bit later. But basically what will happen is that you need to negotiate with the vendor. So the vendor's always going to want you to take the goods. They're never, ever, ever going to want to take the goods back. I would say probably 1% of the time, maybe. But if there's an issue, you are going to want maybe money back. You'll negotiate a discount. So then the vendor gives you money back off the order. If you want to cancel, this is like a big word, and it's definitely a big discussion. And usually you don't just run around canceling things because it's a lot of time and money. And the biggest thing about canceling something is that you need to think about your relationship with this vendor. So a lot of the times vendors will take it very personally. If you cancel an order, that's not a reason to not do it. You need to stand by your product and your brand first and foremost. You also need to weigh out the pros and cons. If you're just mad because they screwed something up, then I don't know, make sure that the punishment fits the crime, I guess is what I say. You want to make sure that you are coming at it, looking at both sides of it. Yes, it is a business transaction, but at the end of the day, you may need this vendor in the future. So you don't want to burn a bridge. Again, I wouldn't take an inferior quality, but if maybe it wasn't what I wanted or what I asked for, but if it's still saleable, then I might, instead of canceling, I might negotiate a very, very steep discount, still taking the goods, decide when I want to put them on the floor, and then deal with it that way rather than, if you cancel a large order, it could really, really hurt that vendor, because then all their time and money was wasted and they won't get anything in return. So there's that. But it happens more often than not, but this is exactly why you need to make sure that you are looking at everything with very close eyes from the beginning throughout the entire process of the design and development. And I think that is all. So that's it for this little tidbit. And yeah, I'll be back at you with some more information on topic. All right, talk to you guys soon. Bye.